Podcast. My opinion. Podcast. All nine niggas.
All right. You guys ready? Mm-hmm. We're going to talk about law. Again, I'm just going to ask some basic questions. You ain't got to give us the whole thing. And these are questions that viewers, that I believe most people really don't understand about the law.
Okay.
So just simple shit. And Rudy, you can interject when you want.
Well, let me start off by asking this question. I don't know if you were already going to ask it, but what kind of lawyer are you?
Oh.
I plead the fifth.
A good one.
Yeah. A good one. So I work for a large law firm. I do commercial litigation. So companies fighting with other companies about all sorts of stuff. Breach of contract.
So mostly contracts.
Contracts. I've been involved in some Ponzi scheme cases, like helping unwind Ponzi schemes, some financial fraud, represent some financial institutions that made loans that went south and the borrowers ended up in bankruptcy. Handling a commercial eviction case right now in San Francisco where a company is, I can't say too much about it, but the company's operating a business there and they've overstayed and they were supposed to purchase, then they didn't. So like the owner of the building wants them out so they can resell the building, that sort of stuff. Okay. Literally mixed bag. So, but all very few like individual representations, mostly companies.
And you went to law school in the Midwest.
Yeah, so I grew up in Central Illinois, college in St. Louis, went to law school at Indiana, and then lived and worked in Chicago for 7 years until I met a girl who lived in the East Bay.
Okay.
So and then she was like, "You're either moving out here or we're done." So,
and I only asked that because we're gonna get to one of those questions. Or fuck it, let's make it the first question.
Okay.
Is I think I worded it. Do you have to go to law school in California to be an attorney?
No.
To be an attorney.
So I don't know that much about this because it's not a path I took, but I do not believe so. And California is one of the only states where you can just sit for the bar exam, right? Like Kim Kardashian apparently did it recently. And California for years, a lot of people take the bar exam after going to unaccredited law schools, like law schools that the American Bar Association doesn't recognize as reputable, and they can take and pass the bar exam. What I've heard is your probability of passing the bar exam is way lower if you go to like an unaccredited law school or if you study on your own. But it does happen in California. Yeah. And as far as I've heard, no other state will let you do that. You have to graduate from an accredited law school to even sit for the bar exam.
Have you heard any reasons or anybody's theories as to why California would even act like that?
No, I don't.
I believe, and I may be wrong. Again, don't quote me on any of this shit, people. But I believe you have to study under an attorney for 2 years before.
In California.
That
might be the case. So maybe you have to have that's
so
more
basically it'd be like me working at your law firm as well.
We're not hiring right now, but
stop calling. Stop emailing us.
Yes, I got your resume. We're
like an apprentice?
That's what I'm saying is and that actually makes sense to me. Like I learned more on the job than in law school. Law school sort of like changes the way you think about things and the way you view things, but it's not practical. It very, very rarely applies to like my life as a lawyer.
Yeah.
My on-the-job training was far more important than the stuff I learned. Law school was sort of like you prove that you can understand this and memorize enough to pass the bar exam. Practicing law is a whole different animal.
So when you say because that's right when I started, we're talking about like how in California you got to study under a lawyer for 2 years, like an apprentice, and then you can become a lawyer or an attorney. I mean, what is it that law school actually taught you that you use to this day? Or is it really just a matter of like, I got to get this off my checklist, so I'm just going to memorize this shit so I can pass the exam? Is there anything like valuable that you feel you pulled from law school?
For sure. So it changes the way you think about things, right? And I had one of my professors my first year teaching torts, which is like personal injuries, intentional battery, negligence, those sorts of things. He said the first day of law school, right now you'll walk past a house party and think, oh my God, that looks like so much fun. We should go in there and have a couple beers and party with everybody. By the time you finish law school, you'll walk down the street and you'll go, There's liquor liability. What if somebody leaves? If they leave that house and drive drunk, then the owner of the house might be liable. So there's like a dram shop thing. If there's any underage drinking, so do they have renters insurance? Like all sorts of weird things. So I became sort of pessimistic after law school and looking at the world in a way that is, what could go wrong? How would this go poorly for somebody, for this individual, this person, this company, whatever? Without a doubt, it sets you up foundationally for, I think it's more about like the tools of how to research effectively, how to write effectively, how to structure arguments.
Understanding the language.
Understanding the language is a huge part. But the actual like practical side of practicing law, like here's a problem, figure it out. That was more on the job training.
Right.
Now,
for me, I mean, it's probably different for everybody. But
my younger brother went to law school and he practices law in Texas. And he started in Naples, but I guess between the first and second year, you're allowed to change over to a different law school.
You can, yeah. A lot of people transfer after their first year.
Yeah. So he switched over to St. Mary's in San Antonio, I believe.
Okay.
And I'm only bringing this up because he was saying about how in law school they really, and this is going to form the question for you. In law school, they teach you a lot about case law, about certain things, but they don't really teach you about trial or how because we've all, well, not we all, but I've been to court enough times to be like, oh, you can't do that and you can't do that. So is there some truth to that? Is there?
For sure.
And
there are, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Did you know that going into law school, or it wasn't until you were finally done? We're like, hey, aren't we going to do like practice trial or
practice?
Yeah.
I'm going to make an ass of myself right now because I went to law school just because I didn't know what else I wanted to do. Interesting. So I sort of was like graduating college. My advisor was, what's your major? I was like, well, I don't know. What am I closest to? And they said, well, what do you want to do? And I said, I don't know. What can I do with this degree? And he said, well, you can go to law school. And I was like, okay, I guess I'll go to law school. Like, I wasn't somebody who wanted, like, always knew I wanted to go to law school. I wanted to do this. I sort of just did it. So that's part of the calculus here. But there are trial advocacy courses you can take in law school. There are internships and things you can do to get some of that trial experience. Yeah. It's never exactly the same because you're not the guy, the person in court standing in front of the judge and the jury, but you get exposed to it. You learn how to make those sorts of arguments and things like that. But there's lots of people that I went to law school with that never took those classes. They get out and they're practicing and their client says, oh, we've been scheduled for trial, and now they have to show up and figure it out. Right. And they really have no idea what they're doing. That's interesting. That is definitely so my firm in particular, but lots of firms do this. We have like an in-house trial training program. So when you're like a second or third year attorney, they put you through like an intensive program to teach you how to take depositions, how to go to trial, how to prepare for trial, what appellate briefing looks like, those sorts of things. It really is on the job training. Law school, I believe everyone takes the same classes their first year. It's your second and third years when you get to choose your classes and pick some specialties and things like that. And I think the point of law school, from my experience, is let's teach everybody the fundamentals. What is a contract? What does it take to form a contract? What is a tort? How civil procedure? How do the rules work? Particularly in federal court, because that's more universal, right? Every state's different, but so they teach a lot of federal rules. And property. What does it mean to have a lease, to have a lien on property, to own property, to have a leasehold interest, those sorts of things. It's like literally just give you a little bit of everything, so that when somebody walks into your office and says, hey, I have a question for you, can you help me with it? Even if you can't help them, you can say, okay, here are the issues. Right. And now I'm going to find you somebody who can help you.
Which is a form of help.
Yeah, of course. So it's I can't do it myself, but I can issue spot well enough to send you to the right person. Right. I feel like that's what law school training was.
Yeah. And again, I'm just putting it out there because, again, most people think you go to law school to learn how to practice the law, where you're kind of getting the foundation from it. As a nurse during the day is what I normally do, right? You get your training, but for nurses, we have in-servicing You know, we call it in services. I forgot what attorneys call it, but
Continuing legal education, CLEs.
so-
and it's not a real.
But
it's sorry.
I was going
ahead.
to say my brother is always taking these extra courses that cost $500 for this course for 3 days of training, and normally it's 2 days of getting drunk with a bunch of attorneys and then 1 day learning something. Right?
Well, I will say I never do that during my continuing legal education
Ryan
courses.
Pinkston doesn't do that, you guys.
Yeah, I would never.
And he's
Again,
got
that's
legal
why I said my
documents to
brother.
prove it.
but I will tell you, it's a lot of watching videos online. They pre-record them, or you can watch them live. And it used to be before the pandemic, you would go in person, stuff like that. But a lot of things in the law are you have to do this, and so the CLEs I take are on subjects that I kind of find interesting or wacky or whatever. So I took like an election law CLE during the last election, Trump Biden,
Right.
where they were just talking about like hot button issues in election and voter fraud and things like that, just because I thought it was interesting.
And do you have to take a certain number of hours?
So you have a certain number of hours. In California, I'm barred in Illinois and California, so excuse me if I get this wrong, but I have to report every other year in Illinois and I think every 3 years in California. And you have to have a certain number of hours of continuing legal education, those sorts of courses.
Okay.
So when I take one of those courses, they send me a certificate. You did 3 hours, blah, 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 whatever. But it's not real. There's no test at the end. There's no quiz.
Yeah.
It's not learning what it's not studying in the traditional sense of
Right.
things. It's being exposed to different legal topics and things like that.
And it's about getting those updates, at least for us nurses too.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah,
There
yeah.
might be some new training that comes along, and then you're like, oh, okay, and you got to get that training. So I'm assuming it's the same thing.
Well, it's,
Right.
your training's probably way more important than my training, but sure.
Well-
Well, I mean, no. Well, actually,
I actually mean that. I'm making a
No,
joke of it,
no,
but
no,
I'm actually serious about that.
I mean, yeah, because his is more immediate.
Yeah.
Yours can affect somebody's life in the long run. You
Yeah,
know, like
yeah, yeah.
they're like bleeding to death, and
Yeah.
your guy is just like fucking being bled money wise to death.
But my CLE is not like I've taken CLEs on stuff that I'll never use in my practice. I just thought they were interesting.
Yes, and but see, but
different
that,
from your type of training, which is like you need to know this for your job.
Well, no, not, I mean,
Or maybe not. I
but,
don't know.
But what if? See, I think there's a lot. What I was going to touch on was that there's a lot of similarities, and I'm glad that Rick mentioned the fact that he does CLE type things in the medical field, because I actually do think that there's a lot of fucking lot of like parallels between the legal world, your training and your training, because the truth is that you can only do theory while you're trying to get your credits, right?
Right.
While you're trying to get your degrees and your certificates, you can only go through theory. Practice is different. You can't really like practice on somebody's real body until you've gone through the theory. You can't really practice law until you've gone through the theory.
Yeah.
So you guys are both studying up on theory, and then it takes a lot of nerve to go from theory to practice.
Yeah.
And there's no way to really practice.
And I'll give you an example. And again, I'm not going to shit on any of the nurses, but I like giving this example. Is we have to get CPR certified,
Right.
every so often.
Yep.
Ask a nurse how many times they've actually given CPR. And 8 out of 10 nurses will tell you they've never given fucking CPR.
Right.
So doing it on a dummy versus doing it on a human being,
Totally different.
Very different.
are
Right.
totally different.
Yeah,
and
right.
I
And
tell
being the
people,
assistant to the
this is the
lawyer.
first time I get to share this story, so that's why I want to. I said, when I was in training, I got most of my training in the military, right? The doctor is there, and the the person is flatlining. Doctor wants me to do CPR. I'm still a student, and I'm like, no, that's fine. And they're doing it, and
No,
that's
that's
the other
fine.
thing that you don't realize.
Like they
is-
offered them some milk. No,
well,
but-
because the patient's a daughter is behind the curtain crying,
Oh,
the
God.
mother's flatlining, and I'm just like, I'm a student, right? The doctor looked at me with disgust, like, move out the way, and he started doing chest compressions.
Wow,
right?
bro.
But again, what they don't teach you in CPR class is you get tired real quick.
Oh, for
you know what I
sure.
mean?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So another minute went by, and then he asked me again, and because he gave me that dirty look, I was all, I'll get in there. He goes,
Good.
don't worry, I'll walk you through it. Look up at the monitor. When you get to this point, and this is how far down your compression is going to go, blah, blah, blah. And I tell people I've never felt so proud of myself when I brought that person back to life.
Oh,
I was
you resuscitated them?
My motherfucking like
That's great.
But that's the one and only
great.
time I've ever done CPR.
Yeah.
And I've been in the medical field over 20 years. So
One time you've done CPR and one time you brought somebody back.
So again, most people think nurses are out here just doing CPR on every patient.
No, that's crazy,
so
bro.
that's why I bring it up. And I think it's even funnier when we go to CPR class. I make it a point to ask the instructor now.
Have you ever done
Have
that?
you ever done it?
Yeah,
And I have not met one instructor that's done it on a human being.
But
yet.
here's the thing though. But here's the thing
that's
though.
funny.
I
That's
don't knock those guys though. I mean, I wouldn't knock those guys because of what we're talking about. I mean, you've been in it for 20 years and you've had a chance to do it fucking one time, right?
Yeah.
And thank God it worked. You could be in school and you're limited to what it is that you could actually do because you can't actually work on somebody until you get your degrees and your certificates. So it's like if somebody has never had the chance to fucking do CPR on somebody, you've been in there for 20 years, you did it once.
But that's why
you can't
I bring
really
it
knock
up,
them
Rudy,
for that
is
though.
because again, you might go to law school, read some shit, do some shit, but then you have, like you just mentioned earlier, then you have an attorney that you got to go to trial.
Yeah,
and they're
but-
like, man, I've never.
but that's
So
not
you've never you would never take advice from them though? Like if
I don't know,
no.
but I'm saying that. So how would you address someone? Do you tell your clients to make sure, like, if you're not the attorney for them, do you tell them, hey, these are the things that I would look for in my attorney?
Yeah,
sorry,
100%.
I can't
Well,
help you.
actually, let me say first of all, the analog that you're talking about comparing that to lawyers is unrealistic because we're not dealing in life or death situations for the most part, right? There's criminal attorneys and stuff that every once in a while.
I was going to say, if I'm serving life, I want a good guy. I want Johnny Cochran.
No, but it's not do this within the next 60 seconds or this person's
Or-
going to die.
yeah, yes.
right.
Totally, that's- yeah.
Like when I get a new case, I might have to go to trial. That's going to be 12 or 18 or 24 months from now.
Right.
It's not do it
got time to prepare.
today. I've had a couple times when I'm in court on like an emergency motion or something where I have very little notice. I have to go in and like make my argument, but that's not life or death, right?
Yeah.
I think the closest thing in the law to what you're talking about, which is nothing I've ever been a part of, are like appeals to the Supreme Court to try to stay a death row sentence,
Yeah.
an execution, where it's literally, we have 12 hours until they're flipping the switch. We got to get this right. I've never been involved in that, but the law generally just doesn't move as quickly as that. So I'm not saying it's a bad example. I'm saying it doesn't translate in the way that maybe some people might think.
Because if I don't do CPR right, I can't appeal it and try to do it again.
Exactly.
So,
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Well, and I also like that's the other thing that's interesting about being a lawyer is everyone's like, oh, well, what do you think about this? I don't know.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought you were a lawyer. I'm like, well, I don't practice that type of law. Well, if you're a lawyer, you should know this. No, I go look it up. I do research. I read the statute. I understand, right? So I have time to go educate myself about this particular case or this particular issue and how the law applies to it. So I sort of get to like, what's the issue? Go study and come back and say, here's the solution and here's how we should present the case to the judge or jury or something like that. It's very rarely like, I need an answer right now.
Yeah.
I mean, clients ask for that, but
It's not realistic.
every lawyer's best answer is, it depends.
Right.
And that's frustrating for clients.
That opens
but
up everything. That opens up all the possibilities.
It's so frustrating for clients, but I say that so frequently because you just never know.
Go
ahead.
I'm curious
Yeah.
about this one thing.
Okay.
So what is it that separates the people that go, you went to school with a bunch of people that you guys all studied theory. You never actually got to practice it. You study theory and then you get into it. And that one part where, you're actually in the court in front of the jury, in front of the judge, in front of the other lawyer. That's the part that you can, there's no way you could practice that in school. You got to do that shit like on the job training. So what is it that separates the people who can actually do that versus the ones who can't? Both you guys went to the same school, took the same test.
Sure.
But what's that defining factor? What's that deciding factor?
There's a lot of personality traits that come into it, just like baseline confidence, ability to speak and be confident in the way you speak. But I think the biggest differentiator is preparation. And and look, I'm talking to two stand-up comedians, right? You guys have been on the stage. What makes the difference between a stand-up comic who goes on stage and wings it versus one guy who goes in with his shit prepared, right?
I'm saying the same shit you're saying. Yeah,
it's all about there are some elements to timing and delivery, but
I could not agree more.
But most of it is preparation.
Yeah,
and preparation leads to confidence, right?
And preparation also leads to being able to do shit on the fly.
Right.
Because now you have no worries about what you're going to run back to because you're so prepared that you know it's there. You can go run off and do whatever you want.
And I'll give you, this is a boring example, but I'll give you an example. I was a junior lawyer, maybe like a second or third year lawyer, and I got an opportunity to argue a motion. It wasn't trial, but argue an issue in court. And I'm in the middle of my argument. The judge interrupts me and says, whoa. How does the argument that you're making square with this case that the Court of Appeals decided last month, blah, 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 blah? Well, Your Honor, if I remember that case correctly, da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da, and the judge was like, oh, okay, that makes sense. Lots of people maybe wouldn't have read that case, wouldn't know about it, wouldn't have prepared well enough to have like an explanation of it, wouldn't be familiar with the facts and the decision, the holding in that case. So it was all about preparation. I looked great,
right?
But it could have been catastrophic if I wasn't familiar with the case that the judge is asking about.
So a judge is there also to make you qualify your arguments.
So yeah,
because I think a lot of people, myself included, I think a lot of people don't fully understand what a judge does. Because we see the judge, then we see the jury. This person is called the judge, but yet the jury makes the decision. So what is the judge's role through? If the jury's making the decision, what is the judge's role in all this?
So let's break it down and be very, very basic. Okay, until you get to trial, there is no jury. And there's going to be lots of issues decided along the way. So, and the judge decides most of those issues. Sometimes you'll have a judge who conducts the trial, but you want to talk about a jury, so you have a jury trial. Okay. Well, if I'm trying to think of an example, if I file a case today and I think you breached a contract, we're going to fight about whether I've alleged enough in the complaint to state a claim and whether it meets the standards under the law. You might move to dismiss, and if I win, now the case goes forward. Now we're talking about discovery. I'm going to ask you to give me all the documents that you have. You're going to ask me to give all the documents I have, and we might come across some fights and things like that, right? And then I'm going to put you under oath and take your deposition and get your testimony under oath. The judge is not involved in that. But if your lawyer instructs you not to answer certain questions, I might have to go to the judge and say, hey, compel Rudy to answer these questions. They're relevant. They're not privileged, this and that. The judge will make that decision. And so then at summary judgment, I'm going to say, even if everything Rudy says is true, I still win based on the law. So grant judgment into my favor. The judge will make that determination. But if the judge decides that there's some issue of fact, right? Like I say the sky is green, you say the sky is blue, and it's a close enough call, he'll say, okay, we're going to go to trial. And you're each going to present your argument to the jury, and the jury's going to look at you testify and watch me testify and decide who's the most credible and decide using their sort of common sense view, is the sky green or is the sky blue?
So before you even get to the jury, both lawyers have already gone through this once.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
I didn't know that.
Well, this is going to lead me to my next question.
And that's why the process takes so long.
Okay,
I think you were kind of alluding to it. Is the question that I wrote is because, again, most people don't know the difference between adjudication and arbitration.
Yeah.
So can you let us know what the difference is there?
Sure. So in lots of instances, especially in the employment context in California, whenever you sign up or you agree to be an employee of somebody, you sign an arbitration agreement, right? That means if we have any sort of dispute, you can't go to court. You have to file a claim with a private individual.
Adjudication agreement.
Arbitration agreement. You basically say, I agree not to go to court. We're not going to resolve this in court. If either one of us has a dispute, we're going to file a claim with an arbitrator. There's entities that exist that do this now. AAA and Jams, shout out. Maybe I get a royalty. I don't know.
AAA?
The American Arbitration Association.
Oh,
It's yeah. Not the, yeah.
That's what it's called. I'm like, bro,
He's like,
fucking
God
called
damn,
them.
like,
right when you get into
my
fucking-
car and
the-
doing arbitration.
Hey man, I need legal help now.
The tow truck driver shows up and you're like, he hit me, and he's like, done, boom.
Dude, I thought it was. I really.
Yeah. No worries,
I was
no
like,
worries.
damn, they're
Yeah,
fucking,
sorry.
they're expanding. I'm like,
And
they're
to be
doing it.
clear, the arbitrator does not even have to go to law school,
So-
be a
Yeah,
judge.
Yeah, what the fuck does the arbitrator got to do?
So technically, no. The arbitrator doesn't have to be a judge, doesn't have to be legally trained, but in most instances, it's somebody who was either a former lawyer or a former judge who then went into this private practice and decided to be an arbitrator.
Oh, so an arbitrator
so-
is conducted by people who went into private practices.
Well, arbitrators are in private practice, and it would be like we have a dispute right now, and we hire the next door neighbor to like decide our dispute. So we go next door, we argue in front of them, and then whatever they say is final, and that's it. Now, in California, what happens a lot of times is somebody still files a complaint in court, and then you go into court, and the other side moves to compel arbitration. Hey, we have this arbitration agreement. We should send it to the private individual that we all agreed upon. Arbitration is far less expensive. It's usually quicker. And so if you're looking for delay, you want to be in court. If you're looking for a quick resolution, you go to arbitration. And a lot of times people will move to compel arbitration, and then the judge decides whether that arbitration agreement's enforceable or not. In lots of other states, they're routinely enforceable.
Right.
In California, there's lots of decisions out there that say this one's not enforceable for this reason or that reason, and they're heavily enforceable in California, but they're less likely to be enforced in California than in other states.
Okay.
Like
Where-
other states are very pro
Whereas the
arbitration
adjudication is
in front of a court. Yeah,
in front of a judge, in
Yeah.
front of a.
right.
So,
Do you think that most states are pro arbitration because is there something in it for the state to have less trials or something?
So part of that is it's just more efficient. It doesn't clog up the court system, but also it's just you are two private parties and you agreed to do something. You should
Be able to work it out.
You should do what you agreed to.
Oh, I see.
So if you and I agree to go to we're gonna agree to start a brewery.
Yeah.
And if we ever have a business dispute, we agree to go to arbitration. Well, after first year, the sales suck, we get in a fight, and you go, I'm going to sue you in court. I go, wait, we
Dude,
agreed.
we already agreed to
We
that,
already
yeah.
agreed. So the courts go, okay, well, then you should do what you agreed to.
Yeah.
Go to arbitration.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Okay, I bring
like
this up because again, Rudy, I don't know if you know this, and the only reason I know this is because my brother told me. So hopefully you're going to say the same thing.
brother.
Is what's the difference between a commissioner and a judge? And let me tell you what my brother told me, and you can tell me if he was
Okay.
right or not. And I only bring this up because the traffic court commissioner where I live at is a commissioner. And when I was telling my brother, he goes, "Oh, so that's not even a judge then?" And I go, "What do you mean? That's the commissioner." And he goes, "No, a commissioner can be anybody off the damn street, doesn't have to practice law." And he goes, "And even more so, you can ask for a judge to preside over your case and take her monkey ass off of it. So this way you can be actually heard by a judge because that's your constitutional right." So tell me that's correct, or tell me where he's
Please.
wrong in that.
You said some choice words in there, so I can't agree with everything. But I will say, and I don't have any direct experience in this area, but my understanding is yes, a commissioner is not a judge. I don't know what their requirements are to be a commissioner. I do believe whatever the commissioner decides, or even if you don't want them to decide it, you do have a right to ask for a judge. But beyond that, I just don't have experience in that
And again,
area.
I only bring this up for viewers and yourself because
Yeah.
I've gone to a traffic court right here in Hayward, right? And again, I never knew because I think I've seen this commissioner. I think I've seen her 4 or 5 times.
Well, you should drive
like-
slower.
Is Commissioner
It-
Gordon?
It's not even. I got a.
I know you didn't do it. I know. That's,
Sure. That's what they all say, right, Ryan?
No, I went to go see her. I got charged with a $40 ticket for jaywalking. So You know what I mean? And
They still
I
hand
seen
those
him for
out?
that. Yeah.
Get the
I mean, that
fuck
was
outta
like
here.
12, 13 years ago. But
Well, you illegally parked in front of the building, so I believe it.
Right. You feel me though? This guy
I
is
can't say
a
allegedly
walking
because it was
infraction.
enforced.
That's a walking infraction. Everybody goes.
No.
But it was one of those things where I was like, man, it wasn't until my brother told me, he goes, well, go in there. And I swear, like, nobody else had asked for a judge.
Of course not. No. They show up and they just assume the person sitting at the tall table in the front of the room is the gospel truth, and you have I don't think commissioners have that sort of scope of power. They're probably appointed as like assistants to the court, but as far as I'm aware, they're not judges. They don't have this. They don't have the same power, and so you do have certain constitutional rights. Not in every circumstance, but in most circumstances, you have a constitutional right to sit in front of a judge.
So, and at least for me, that's what happened. For
The
traffic.
Did you
Commissioner.
wait? So did you ask for a judge?
Yes, I asked, and I can tell you it pissed off everybody when I asked. And finally, when it came back and I filed the right paperwork, because oh man, I should have had that where there's a difference between the trial by Nevo and the trial by declaration or whatever too. Where most people don't understand the difference of that.
What?
I also don't understand that.
Nevo and Deckler. What the fuck is this?
Wait.
Well,
Do you mean
sound like
trial?
shaving gels.
Do you mean trial de novo?
Is it de
De novo?
This
Is
guy's
that-
fucking up the
yeah.
language. You see
Well,
why this is why you go to school, kids.
It's Latin. It's fine.
Or the trial? And what I'm getting at is, and again, maybe that's the term, right? Is the trial by declaration? Is I tell people because I have been
You
stopped.
write down what happened and then submit it.
So
Yeah,
this is
go
the
ahead.
thing that most people don't know is let's say you get pulled over by a cop, and then you go in, you give your plea, whatever it is. Well, I always take the trial by declaration because the difference is here is if I lose on the trial by declaration and the trial by declaration, you have to submit paperwork to the court.
Mm-hmm.
The cop has to submit paperwork into court, and then they can give you a judgment and say you're guilty. You can appeal that, and then do the trial by
Trial de novo. Yeah.
and then, but because we have the trial by declaration paperwork, now I know what the cop is going to say,
Right.
and he can't deviate and add shit in because it's all record. So I tell people do that every time, and every time I get pulled over, I always ask. The downside of that is, depending upon which county it is here in California, I know Bakersfield because I've gotten a ticket there. They make you pay for the ticket, which I don't think is constitutional, but they do it anyways. And then you got to go back and fight for it again that way. But
Yeah.
I tell people that's a good way of doing it because then again, when you go to court, if you've been to traffic court, it's just your word versus their word, and they can make up whatever they want. And you're like, that didn't even happen, bro.
Right,
so, and again, I've only known this because I've gone to court enough times for stupid traffic violations for tint windows or something stupid where you're like, dude, that's not even what happened.
now
I've
you
had
know
a
the
cop
difference.
say that I wasn't wearing a seatbelt, and I was like, he saw me take it off. I had to get my wallet in my back pocket, and then they start charging you for extra things where, again, that's the difference. Am I right or wrong?
You sound like you're guilty.
Yeah, for sure.
Seems super defensive about
God,
this,
man.
right?
Hey, cry wolf much? Jesus Christ. Come on.
We're going to edit that out.
Your Honor, clearly the defendant is fucking up. He's drunk right now, Your Honor.
No, so trial by declaration, right? You submit each side submits affidavits, and then the judge reviews the paperwork and decides. And then trial de novo. De novo just means like of new, like starting over.
Okay.
And so anytime there's de novo, it's like starting from scratch. And so the trial de novo would be you have to show up and actually you're going to have to get on the stand and testify. The officer might have to get on the stand and testify. I've had traffic tickets in California. I've never contested any of them because I'm a law-abiding, honest citizen. Rick.
Me too.
But yeah, sounds like it.
Sure, buddy.
But I did get a ticket in Illinois, a red light ticket because there was an emergency vehicle behind me and I pulled out in the intersection. They caught me on a red light camera or whatever. So I went in to contest that. And the charges actually the traffic violation got dismissed because the officer didn't show up to testify against me. And so there is a requirement in most circumstances for the officer to show up and testify. So trial by declaration, if all they have to do is submit the police report, they're going to do that.
Yeah.
Whereas if you just ask for the trial de novo, they might not even, I don't know, they might not even show
See,
up for the court date. I don't know.
Because it's more than just paperwork.
Well,
No,
and
you're right.
They're busy. They got other things to
got
do,
shit to
right?
do. Let me
Like-
fuck him in a seatbelt.
This is
Yeah.
kind of one of the reasons why I bring it up, Ryan. Is again, you go to law school so you can learn all the proceedings of court. Most of us don't know that, right?
Yeah,
and
but-
I bring it up because again, you haven't heard any of my jokes, so I don't know if you're aware. I only have 9 fingers, right? So,
I am aware of that. Yeah.
so-
no, we
so-
talked
yeah,
about
yeah.
your.
Counted.
Okay.
He counted.
No. We talked about it. We talked about your little icon.
Oh, okay, yeah. Oh, that's right.
Yeah,
The
someone was-
copyright, the stolen.
Someone's
the stolen-
someone's biting your shit.
Somebody's stolen my stuff.
Yeah.
So, but I bring that up because in my car accident, when they towed my car, they stole everything in my car. So when I got out of the hospital, went to go pick it up, I ended up suing the tow yard, but because I didn't know the proceedings and because I didn't put it in my court paperwork,
Yeah.
when I flew back out to New Mexico to do the case, the judge who already knew the tow company because it's a small town, Lordsburg, New Mexico, was like, "Sorry, you didn't put it in your court paperwork, so we can't let you submit." I had a video that showed all the stuff that was there 6 hours after the accident, and then when I went to go pick it up, everything was out of the car and missing. So I had to, and he wouldn't let me submit it because again, I'm not an
rules,
attorney.
yeah.
I didn't know the procedures.
Yep.
I didn't know any of that.
I'll give you so America's justice system, the way it works on the civil side and on the criminal side, actually, we have Brady violations and stuff like that, where the prosecution is actually obligated, if they have evidence in their possession that tends to exculpate you, meaning show your innocence, they have to affirmatively give it to you. And so there's lots of wrongful convictions that get overturned because somebody finds out the prosecutor had a witness that they knew about that said, no, that person was with me, they had an alibi, and then they don't tell the defense side, right?
Wow.
Stuff like that happens. I mean, watch Making a Murderer on Netflix. It's fast.
You
It's
have to
fascinating.
tell them that.
Yeah, well, the prosecution does, right?
Interesting.
So in the civil side, I don't have to tell the other side. no, but wait, hang on. Not that I'm allowed to hide it.
Yeah.
But like the other side has to ask the right questions.
Right.
Like if I'm looking for information from Rudy, Rudy, give me all documents relating to this incident. I want to know everybody who has any knowledge of it. Blah blah. Then he has to give it to me. But if I say, give me all documents related to your car, you don't have to give me documents related to the accident that happened. I didn't ask the right question.
Right.
Right? And so there's no affirmative obligation for me to say, look, this is everything we have.
Yeah.
But if you ask the right questions, I have to give it to you.
Yeah.
In that circumstance, my guess is the judge's ruling was based on the fact that they asked you to, what documents or what evidence are you going to use at trial? And if you don't give it to them in advance, you're not allowed to put it on at trial.
Yeah.
Our system is very much like let the lawyers learn about everything that happened and then prepare for trial.
Right.
Other countries have a system where you just show up and surprise, this is what I'm going to say. In the U.S., it doesn't happen that way. It happens that way if lawyers are bad at their job.
Yeah. So is it possible that two lawyers who one believes he was asking all the right questions and the other one figures that he didn't, after they've exchanged whatever documents and they go to court and then the judge asks, how did all this go down? And the first lawyer says, well, I mean, Your Honor, they didn't ask me for that. This is what they asked me for. And then the lawyer too is like, hey man, that's fucked up because that's not what I said. Is it possible that argument itself could be lifted from the case and start a different argument to see who was right or wrong on that?
I have, and those are the types of arguments that judges decide before the jury ever sits in the courtroom.
Okay, so a judge is looking at this shit and saying, okay, picking the lice out of it.
And this isn't hypothetical. I deal with this on a weekly basis where we're in court on a motion to compel discovery. Either I'm asking the other side to give me more documents or the other side's asking me. And I have a lawyer say, Your Honor, we asked for X, Y, and Z. And I say, Your Honor, they never asked for that.
Right.
Judge says, well, let me see the document. That's why we do everything in writing, right?
Can
judge says, all right,
can we
take a look
use
at
this as one of the examples, Ryan? And if you don't want to discuss it, just say you don't. But I do because I wrote it as one of the questions, and it's about where I live.
Yeah,
it's about Scott Peterson. Can we talk about the Scott Peterson case
So-
a little bit?
so-
and let me throw it out there again, because this is the only time I
Now,
get
you've been
to.
a Scott Peterson defender for the last 20 years. Yeah.
Yes. Free
yeah.
Scott is what I say. I'm looking right there. And
First-
even
Whoa!
more so.
First
even,
Cosby, now Scott.
I'm telling you, man.
No. Even
You're
more
on the
so,
wrong side of
it is-
history, brother.
it's
You're on the
one-
wrong side of history.
It's more hitting home to me than anybody else.
Yes.
Is I tell people when I have my child custody issues, me and my attorney, I was like, man, I don't even know how the judge became a judge. He looks so young, blah, blah, blah. My attorney goes, you know how he became a judge, right? And I go, no. He goes, that was the man who put Scott Peterson away. So that's why I was like, man, I can't wait to talk about this Scott Peterson shit, right? So
No comment.
Ryan's like, I want to separate
again,
myself from this portion of this podcast,
my kids
please.
are
I
over.
might have to appear in front of that judge. Like,
Might have to,
I'm
bro.
not
We're
talk about
gonna blur your
No,
face out for this
because
portion.
it's family court. It's family court, so you don't do family. But
I know.
I don't know how much you know about the case.
So I know a lot about the case because I watched it on the news and things as it was
Okay.
happening. It was
And
before,
there was some evidence
It was
that
before
wasn't
I ever.
submitted.
It was I know, and it was before. And I talk about the O.J. Simpson trial a lot too. In the same way that, like, if you watched the trial in the media, we knew so much more than what was actually presented to the jury, because a lot of the stuff in the O.J. Simpson trial got excluded.
Yeah.
So we're like, oh, clearly that piece of evidence is really
That's
damaging.
fucking
Oh,
crazy.
he had, I can't remember all the particulars, but like, oh, he had blood in the Bronco. That's evidence, right? And maybe the jury never heard that fact.
Right.
So they go into the jury room and they're deliberating. They're not even talking about critical pieces of evidence
Right.
that we've seen on the news, right? So I'm familiar with Scott Peterson case. I do agree it's probably likely that having success in a high profile case leads to that person becoming a judge or having some other. A lot of prosecutors, like U.S. attorneys, in perfect example, a lot of times they work in the U.S. attorney's office and they prosecute these high profile cases, and then they get really lucrative jobs at private firms.
Yeah.
Because they have tons of trial experience and people know them, right? Oh, you're the guy that prosecuted Scott Peterson. Lots of people will hire him just on name recognition.
Right.
Appointment to a judge is a different process, but it's the same sort of thing. You've proven yourself here. You're high profile. In Illinois, I'll tell you, because I'm not there as frequently, so I don't practice as often there. In Illinois, most of the appointments to the state court and up to the federal bench are political appointees. So if you're active in the Democratic Party, you have a higher likelihood of being appointed to the bench in Chicago than if you're not, or if you're Republican or just conservative generally. So, like, a lot of the judges in Cook County Circuit Court in Chicago are political appointees. They get appointed because of their activities in politics, not because of their chops as a litigator.
No.
Just think about that next time somebody's
have you
deciding your
followed
traffic
the-
case.
the-
I mean,
reals, yeah,
it's-
seriously.
Have you followed the Peterson case just recently, where they're trying to get his trial to be reheard?
I heard that there was new evidence, and I haven't followed it specifically, but I mean, tell me what's going on, and I'm happy to spitball on it.
New stuff.
Have you, Rudy?
I just briefly on the news today.
Because
this morning.
I guess there was a van, there was a break-in across the street that got reported, and they're thinking that this van may have Lacey Peterson's blood in it.
Okay.
But that evidence wasn't submitted during the whole hearing.
Yeah.
So they're trying to
Did they know about it at the time?
Yes, they knew about it at the
So
time.
who knew about it?
Modesto PD.
Okay, so this is the Brady violation that I'm talking about, right?
Yeah.
If the prosecution or law enforcement know about something that may tend to prove your innocence, they typically have an affirmative obligation to turn it over to the defense.
Damn.
It's it's our system, right?
Well,
you have to be guilty beyond a proof beyond a reasonable doubt.
But why would
If I, as a-
Modesto? Why would they be compelled themselves to not turn that in? Like, don't they want to clear it up the right way?
No.
Well, why?
Well, I don't know about them specifically. I don't want to
But
comment.
why? What would
whoa.
what
No,
would
no, no, no.
a
Yeah.
police department have to gain by not handing over that type of evidence?
Real quick, these opinions are my own. They're not the opinions of my clients or my law firm.
But they are the opinions of Rick James.
He told me. I could say that if I want. I said no, but here we are. We're in the deep waters now.
No, you did it. You
everybody
did it.
get ready.
Let's get thigh deep.
because I also felt like, and maybe you could say the other side right now, is I felt like there was circumstantial evidence, but the fact like they didn't find any hair fibers in the boat, they didn't find anything, they didn't find like that he cleaned out the whole house. That's been my argument from the beginning. Do I think he had something to do with it? Maybe, right? We'll put that out there. But I was just like, if
Going out on a limb there, Rick.
If he didn't do it, or if he did, I should say,
sound like the OJ book,
and they get released, then he needs to open up a cleaning company,
right?
Because the way he cleaned up the everything, bro, like,
yeah. Look, at the heart of what you're saying, I can agree with, which is let's get it right. And if he didn't do it, he didn't do it. Let's get it right. So I think if the police department knew about something, or the prosecutor knew about something that may tend to prove his innocence, then they should have disclosed it in the case. And so maybe he's entitled to a new trial under the law. Legally, procedurally, that makes sense to me. Whether it's going to make a difference, I don't know.
Yeah.
And also you have to show, I believe, I'm not a criminal lawyer, but I believe to get a new trial in these circumstances, you have to show that the evidence would have made a material difference.
Right.
And that's a tricky question in these
Right,
cases,
then
right?
That creates a whole new fucking debate.
Yeah, and so it's the debate you're having. Like, well, how much evidence is on this side of the scale versus this one little piece here? Does it tip the balance? And, when it's DNA evidence that this person sitting on death row, his DNA wasn't in the room and it belongs to a third party, that's clear cut.
Right.
This idea about the van across the street, that's more gray area, right? It's harder to do. So I don't know. I hadn't heard that specifically. I heard that he'd requested a new trial, but I wasn't sure of the grounds. Yeah. I think he's got an uphill battle to get a new trial from a legal perspective.
And they're saying that he might not even get another trial.
He might not.
You know
That's what
I
I'm
mean?
saying is, right or wrong, he may not get another trial. It's hard to prove, especially after how many years of appeals and blah 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 blah. So, Rudy, you asked me a question. Why?
I got to hear the answer. Your answer to that.
So why would they not turn that evidence?
What do they have? And I'm not asking that as a immediate enemy of police or anything like that.
No,
this is a legitimate question.
I get it.
What do they have to gain?
Look, it's an adversarial process, and you have people sometimes that are inherently competitive with one another, and they want to win. And so but win at what costs? And that's the question. And sometimes police, prosecutors, even defense counsel, they think this guy did it. Let's put him behind bars. Let's get it over with. Get this guy off the street. And you have defense counsel who... Let's use OJ. If you asked OJ's counsel, they might say, no, I don't think he did it.
Yeah.
And maybe they're right, maybe they're wrong. But they'll do whatever it takes to prove that he didn't do it. It's still we're still human. We're still flawed.
I like how you worded
it's
that.
It's a competitive game.
It's an adversarial. What do you say? An adversarial.
It's an adversarial process.
Yeah. But with that being said, I have to throw this in there because that was probably the worst possibility and response to that question. Because and I'm not saying that you're bad for it. I'm saying that the fact that's a theory or that's an idea or that is a reality because it's an adversarial conflict.
Yeah.
The fact that exists is very disheartening and heartbreaking and heart-wrenching.
For sure.
What I want to say is this. The reason I'm asking that question is because I sense that might be like the worst, possibility, and in some cases it is. I think that if anybody is found guilty of withholding that type of evidence with that in mind, and they're found to be withholding that evidence because they had that in mind, that adversarial spirit.
Yep.
I think they should be treated the same way that someone who commits first-degree homicide should. Because first-degree homicide is based off this idea that you knew what the fuck you were doing.
Yep.
And you did it with clear intention and wholeheartedly, and there was no accidents about it. You planned it out. This is exactly what the fuck you wanted. You were malicious in your intent. Yep. And I think that those people... If any of them exist, which I'm sure they do, and there's probably some out there just barely hanging on right now. Yeah. And if this guy from Modesto PD ends up being that, they need to treat that motherfucker, throw the fucking telephone book at him, because that is premeditated.
So right,
and that is of the most malicious intent.
Well, listen. So I agree with you, but it's a matter of degrees.
First degree.
Well, no, I understand. But But let me say this: like we still have the fairest judicial process in the world.
Yeah,
without question. So there's that, and I'm not here to defend our judicial system has lots of flaws, right? And this is one of them. Proof beyond a reasonable doubt is an incredible standard that gives us all a lot of hope and promise for our liberty, right? That's a hard burden to meet. It should be, because we don't want to put people in prison wrongfully, but lawyers and juries and judges are imperfect, right? So sometimes people get wrongfully convicted. I'm not saying it's right. I'm saying sometimes it happens in an innocent way.
Right.
Sometimes it happens. I'm a lawyer. I'm going to go into court and do the best job for my client. I'm never going to lie. I'm not going to cheat. I'm not going to steal. I'm not going to do anything unethical.
Look into the camera when you say that.
I'm not going to do anything unethical.
Right.
But if the other side has a bad lawyer and I win because they have a bad lawyer, that's the way the game is set up.
Yes.
Right. Criminal is different in that they have this affirmative obligation to turn it over. When I say it's a matter of degrees, this guy knew about a van that was across the street that was broken into that may have some clues or something. Maybe he should have said something. Maybe he should have turned that over or disclosed that information. That's different than the guy who planted evidence in the defendant's home or, wiped blood off the knife so he could frame a third party.
How is it different?
It's different because the intent and culpability is different, right? It's possible that somebody said, "Oh, there's a van across the street. I don't think it's connected," and they made a judgment call, as opposed to like intentionally doing something to harm the person or to frame that sort of person.
Right.
And I'm not just playing. You're smiling at me.
I'm smiling because
not playing
that
word.
is the most attorney answer I've heard.
I'm not playing word games or anything.
No,
I'm
I hear
being
you, I hear
serious.
you.
Like there are cops out there that legitimately frame people.
Yeah.
Those people.
The movie Hurricane Carter with Denzel Washington, something like that.
Spend the rest of your time in prison.
Right.
And I was also smiling.
Yeah, that's
Ryan,
fine.
Because again, when I brought it up, let's piggyback off of what Rudy was saying. Is let's say everybody on the prosecuting side knew what was going on. I have a horse in this race because the prosecutor became my attorney that didn't give me fair, and I've seen him give multiple people, in my opinion, dads that I've sat in family court, and he now presides over.
You're saying there was a prosecutor that became the judge who's now overseeing your cases.
Yes.
Okay.
But
so
I'm
not
saying,
your
what
attorney,
if you
became your judge.
So
okay.
so to like you hear this story and you're like, well, there's degrees of this or that, but again, this man has built a career off of somebody that may be alive. We don't know. But I'm saying it affects other people
I agree
as
with you.
it would.
Yeah.
Not only it affected Scott's life, look at how it's affected mine. You know what I
there's-
mean? So you look at shit like that where you're like, what happens to that motherfucker if you knew? And the honest answer is normally nothing wrong.
Right.
Rudy.
Right.
Normally Scott will get released and everybody's life will go on about the same. And
I agree with consequences, swift and harsh. If somebody is found out to have violated something in that manner and it deprives somebody of their life or their liberty, I 100% agree with that. Swift and harsh consequences. I guess what I'm saying is not telling somebody that there was like this late night phone call to a hotline or something where it's a little squishier,
right?
That versus framing something,
So
it's different.
Your contention is that something like this could be not really that consequential.
Well,
It's really not that big of a deal.
Yeah, and let's find out. I honestly, literally coming in cold, I don't know enough about it.
No, me neither. Yeah,
But if Modesto Police Department and the prosecutor, now judge, knew something about it, I would wholeheartedly support significant consequences for everybody.
And I'm not saying the prosecutor knew anything at this point.
No, we don't know. I mean,
my kids are over the age of 18 and it can't affect me anymore.
We just heard that story this morning. I heard that story this morning at the station. So I was really I was intrigued by it because I was like, wow, I wonder what's going to come out.
All Rick heard was there might be something in the Scott Peterson case, and he's like, how can I use this to my advantage?
Exactly.
I got a podcast about it now.
Which leads me to the next question, which again, it concerns me as well, but we're going to ask you. When it comes to employee rights, I want to know what's the difference between being represented by unions in the state versus representing yourself. And the only reason I bring it up, and I brought this up in the past, is because I feel like our labor commission board here is a pretty good labor commission board in the state versus other states.
Okay.
Where I only bring that up because I follow a bunch of attorneys on TikTok, and the one thing they don't talk about is unions. They're like, especially there's this guy out of San Diego that talks about your employer if he isn't doing this right, and I'm like, why don't you bring up the fact that if you're in a union, you're not allowed to fight for yourself?
Damn.
You are not in the state, and I don't care. And I only bring that up again. I'm part of a union, and I feel like if my union just did their job, I wouldn't have to do it for them. Where I wish I could fight for myself. And the only reason I'm bringing it up is because I wish more attorneys that would get on this shit would tell the regular person. Again, if I don't get paid on time, I can't go tell my employer shit. They're like, go tell your union steward, and then we'll see if we pay you. Yeah. Where I think that's a big misconception. So what do you feel about that? Again, we'll get more into it, but am I saying what's right or what's not right in this? Again, this is one of the, you took the bar in Illinois and in
California.
And all the nurses about to tune into this.
That might be a big difference too, right? Because again, my brother said, when he took the bar in Texas, it had nothing about unions, and then didn't pass the bar here because he didn't fucking study unions.
Yeah, I don't remember anything about collective bargaining on the California bar exam. I don't think it's or in Illinois. I mean, I don't think it's a tested subject, right? Like states don't test on every area of the law. They sort of test across, like I said, a broad general subset of subjects, so that you sort of a little bit about a lot. Right? Okay. You don't know a lot about anything. You know a little bit about a lot. So you can issue spot. That's the whole point of the bar exam and frankly, the point of law school, in my opinion. You're not going to like this answer. I don't think I'm qualified to answer that question. I don't deal enough. My firm does a lot of labor and employment work, mostly on the management side. So I have friends that deal in this space. It's not something I've ever really dealt with. So like I don't want to say something that's incorrect and lead somebody to think the wrong thing. Yeah. I do know labor unions are more prevalent here in California than they are in Illinois. My understanding is consistent with yours that if you have a dispute with your employer, I think you're obligated to go to your union first, and the union handles it for you. I think they view that as a benefit, as a perk, right? Like, we'll handle the fight for you. You don't have to do it yourself. But that could also be a hindrance. I could see that. It's just not something I've ever dealt with personally. I can't speak in any sort of educated way on the topic.
Okay.
Sorry, buddy.
I'm again.
Looks like you're gonna have to stay on the other side of the picket line. Can I go to work without being chastised by my peers? That's essentially. Listen, can I still wear the scrubs when I go out?
Yeah, that's a very serious answer to your question. I just I honestly don't even know where to begin answering that question in any way that I would know is right.
You know, this whole thing was put together just so you can get that legal advice. Right?
Yeah, it's what it feels like. Yes.
All right, wait. So since you're asking for legal advice, let me ask you this one. Okay?
You're both getting an invoice, by the way. Go ahead.
Like shit. Can you send it to me in payments? So here's one from my personal life. This just happened 2 months ago. My truck was stolen. Okay. And my truck was stolen while it was parked in my parking stall of the place that I live at. I live at a place where I pay for an HOA. Okay.
Yep.
And part of that HOA, from my understanding, is the fact that we're paying for the security cameras on grounds. Right.
Yep.
My truck got stolen about 2 months ago, a little less than 2 months ago. I go outside. It's parked in my stall, which I pay for. Mm-hmm. And I realized that I'm carless now. And then,
I was just thinking about the video where he's like, my car was
I was on the news. The news came to do a story on it.
It's not here no more.
I'm like, it's in number 11. You can clearly see the 11 marked right there and no car. And what was really fucked up, Ryan, is that the news decided to do like this sad story.
I knew you looked familiar.
Yeah, I'm sad guy with no vehicle number one.
He was doing a book drive and they stole all the books.
Oh, dude, I was doing a book drive.
Those criminals didn't
read
it.
I had 500 books in the truck and they stole the fucking truck.
What about the kids?
I hope that piece of shit who took my truck felt bad when he saw Clifford the big red dog just bouncing around onto his foot. You know, piece of shit.
He's just about to be well read.
Yeah, pretty much. He probably burned the books first, little dope fiend. But I digress.
Yeah, go ahead.
I went outside. My car is gone, and I'm thinking about my HOA now, and I'm like, damn, man, like these motherfuckers kind of failed me, you know, because after my truck got stolen, I called them the next day, and I was like, hey, can you guys send me the footage from this time to this time? Because I'm trying to work with the San Leandro Police Department to figure this out. They're like, oh, our cameras haven't worked in 4 years. Ooh. And I'm like, what? I'm like, you guys have nothing going on? So I had to go resort to asking my neighbors for their Ring camera footage, but nobody had the right angle.
Yeah.
So I'm like, can I fucking claim something against the HOA? Because these motherfuckers left me hanging super tough.
So my guess is
Read your
just
contract.
guesses. Just guesses.
Exactly. Read your contract.
Read the
like my
HOA
guess
contract.
is in exchange for your dues to the HOA, you have an agreement with them about the types of things that they're going to provide for you in exchange.
Right.
And if they haven't met if they haven't provided the types of things they promised to provide, then yeah, you probably have a claim.
Now, what if you were the HOA, what would you tell me in order to wiggle out of this?
Oof, any manner of things.
Go for it. Give me 2.
Yeah, we're not responsible for a third party who, like, some dope fiend stole your truck. That's
Right.
not my problem.
Right.
Did you leave your car unlocked? Your truck unlocked?
Right.
You probably left it unlocked. That's on you.
So they would have the audacity, or would that be just normal protocol for them to just be like, dude, just tell them anything to get them off the phone?
Well,
Like,
I don't.
what is
I
it?
mean, I don't know about your HOA.
But
lots of people's immediate reaction. Anytime somebody says, "Hey, I think you owe me something," lots of people's immediate reaction is to give you 10 reasons why that's not the case.
Right.
That doesn't.
So don't let that deter me.
That
is what
doesn't
you're saying.
surprise me.
Yeah.
No.
So you're saying the ultimate thing would be to go check the contract and be like, hey, look, whatever the fuck you said, I don't care, because in the contract it says this.
Like, for example, if your contract says, as in exchange for your dues, we're going to provide video surveillance and we'll keep recordings for X number of days or whatever, then they should abide by that. If that's what they agreed to. If they didn't, then they got a problem.
Let's say it does say that and they didn't abide by that. What would be my next step?
Seek legal representation.
That's what the fuck I'm talking about, man. I like that shit because that's my only fucking little speck of hope that I have left. Because I brought the fucking news on and they did nothing for my fucking truck. They didn't find my shit. I thought if I was on the news, somebody find it. I got more books than a truck, which is fine. I don't mind.
Respectfully, I can't believe you thought the news was going to do anything for you.
You know what? I guess I was just really desperate. But I'm glad to hear that though, because there was a part of me that was like, dude, I mean, they have all these signs on the ground that are like, make sure to lock your cars and lock your doors and shit. And I don't know if that meant that they were basically saying it's not our responsibility.
Look, if you go to court, they might argue that you left your truck unlocked, and so therefore you're somehow contributorily negligent, and so you both should bear fault in some percentage or whatever. So maybe you're 60% responsible for this because you left your truck unlocked.
Well, that's better than 100.
Right. So I don't know. It's look, people come up with all sorts of creative arguments. That's part of my job, is just to come up with arguments.
Break that shit down.
Look. Don't argue things that have no basis in fact or law, but there's lots of creative things you can argue.
So the moral of the story is that you can get in trouble for lying, but you can't get in trouble for having creative arguments.
Not that many people get in trouble for lying.
Wow. Damn. That's
Okay.
All right, well, cool. Well, shit.
Since we're talking about
that makes the playing field even then.
No.
I'll be like, I saw the head of the HOA break into my truck.
No.
Well, where's the video evidence? Well, the fucking cameras don't
We'll
work.
edit this out, Rudy.
No, I'm not trying to get sued for slander or defamation or anything. So like that's
not what he meant.
Yeah.
Ryan Pinkston does not agree with my views.
What I meant was, like, perjury is a real thing.
Yeah.
People lie under oath, and it's very rarely prosecuted. Damn. And I actually, as a lawyer, somebody who's like, I took a vow to uphold an ethical standard, and I will tell you proudly, I've never lied.
Yeah.
I haven't necessarily told everybody everything I knew when I wasn't obligated to tell them. Like I said, if they don't ask the right questions, that's on them, right?
Right.
But I've never lied, and I'm very proud of that fact.
There you go.
But people lie.
The one honest attorney.
But yeah, maybe.
Do you think that?
But I've had experiences where somebody lied in court. I knew they were lying. I proved that they were lying. We made a criminal referral, and there was no consequences.
Nothing.
Like, perjury is very rarely prosecuted. It's frustrating to me.
Is there anything worse that we can do to people for perjury other than putting them in jail? Is there anything worse that we can do that would prompt people to not lie? That would lower the percentage of liars?
No.
I don't think so.
So just if motherfuckers will lie at the risk of going to prison, and they're willing to do that, you're saying there's nothing else we can do.
Like, what would I want the penalty to be?
What would you want the penalty to be?
Kind of depends on what the lie is about, right?
Yeah, I'm with that.
If you lie
like
about,
if you're the Modesto PD,
well, shit, I knew. That's why I said that. I knew where it was going.
I'm just fucking with you, man.
Were they under oath? I don't know.
I mean, they're just the police. They're not under oath.
Hang on. Let me answer the question. It depends. I don't know.
All right, and
I think we just found Scott
again,
Peterson's
hopefully
new lawyer.
everybody's finding this as entertainment and informative.
My
All
wife
right,
wouldn't
people,
let me.
that-
My wife. I promise you this. My wife would not let me represent Scott Peterson. She's a Bay Area kid. I heard about the Scott. I was like, I'm moving to the Bay. She's like, have you heard about Scott Peterson? I was like, can we talk
Dude.
about like where I'm going to live?
Let me tell you where Scott Peterson fucked up is that he fucking frosted his tips. Okay,
Yeah.
because only a man that's been married for that long is like planning on a fucking new life. Only then will he frost his tips. This motherfucker should have waited for the shit to clear up and then frost his tips and then go live his life. Because they found him with all that cash and
Yeah.
and like
but
he
his
had changed
attorney
his hair.
had a good excuse
Yeah, he did
for him.
but it was
right?
it was bad imagery though. The fucking
What was even worse was Amber Fry coming out. But that's
Oh,
neither here
yeah,
nor there.
yeah.
The one thing I want to talk about, hopefully you've got an answer for me this time.
Okay. Well, sorry, man. I can't.
Or maybe you've
I
got
can't
some
solve
train-
all your
is-
legal
is-
shit.
this motherfucker wants me legal.
listen.
Ryan, I appreciate you for what you are. All right, this guy wants to fucking judge
Again,
Wapner.
I'm only bringing this up because most people
You
don't,
couldn't tell me how to deal with my union.
most people don't believe
Go
me.
ahead, go ahead.
Nobody could.
Okay.
Right? The NRLB isn't helping me with this damn union. So if they can't, I don't know who's going to. But this question comes up. My brother and I were talking about arbitration stuff.
Yep.
And I tell people I normally don't get an app on my phone because half the time you don't realize you're signing some shit when you agree to their terms for arbitration. So, like,
Correct.
We'll go to McDonald's and I don't have the app. I told my girl, order it through your app because if I get hot coffee spilled on me, I want to take these motherfuckers to court.
Straight up.
So can we talk about a little bit about that? And have you
Yeah,
had
sure.
any other training? Is that true? Is it not true is it maybe true to some?
How hot does the coffee have to be in order to put in a
Because
lawsuit?
again, most people don't. Did you know that?
I
Did you
didn't- I
know
didn't
that?
know that. I didn't know
when
that.
you sign up for an app, most of the time you're signing
Arbitration agreement.
An arbitration agreement.
I had no idea.
Look, every company that's worth its salt, especially electronically with terms and conditions, nobody reads it. They know that nobody reads it. It's going to have an arbitration provision, and it's going to have all sorts of other terms and conditions that you don't know that you're agreeing to. The interesting question is, like, does that make it enforceable or not, right?
Yeah.
Because typically,
does.
if we're going to enter into a contract, I have to enter into the terms and conditions knowingly. I have to know what
But
they
doesn't
are.
that signature prove
But-
that you knew?
Well, so that's the representation, so it's
Yeah.
hard to get out of, right? And so the interesting question is, like, to me, it's interesting, like, did I actually agree to that even though people know that you don't read those?
Right.
But I'm the bad example on this, and it drives my wife crazy. Anytime we go anywhere or we're downloading an app or something, I read the terms. I read
Yes.
like, we're in line to get an oil change, and they're like, yeah, just sign here. And I'm like, wait a minute. And Amy's like, my wife, Amy, oh, no, just sign that. I'm like, hang on, I want to read this. You don't have to read it, just sign it. I'm like,
You
no.
don't have to read it.
I'm like, no, which is most people's reaction.
Of course.
Right?
Again,
I'm
that's
like-
the only
I'm like,
reason I bring it up.
No, I'm going to read this. And So I read everything before I sign it. I don't put my
Yeah.
signature on something unless I sign it.
Yeah.
But lots of people don't. I think that's fairly,
Not a good idea.
fairly
And
well.
it's just sad
It's a
because-
terrible idea. You're literally giving away your rights
Well,
without
well-
reading something. It's terrible.
And
The
even more
only-
so, Rudy, I was going to say, just the other day I had an update on my TV and they had an arbitration agreement where it's become so that we're just so used to, okay, just check mark it.
Yeah.
But that's the only reason I'm bringing up people is don't check mark everything. Don't just sign off.
Right.
Read it if you want to.
My
and
official
if you
legal
don't give a
advice-
fuck, then
My official legal advice is read everything before you put your name to it, regardless of what it is.
Yeah.
If you don't, you might be giving up a right that you otherwise would have had.
Even though you're not going to understand what you're reading, just make it a habit. You know what I'm saying? Like fucking like start because you might actually learn some of those words.
I'm going into this new line of work. I'm opening my new firm where I just read people's terms and conditions and tell them what they're agreeing to before
That's
they're
fucking
down.
phenomenal.
Yeah, I'm made that up. I'm
But
not
dude,
doing that.
Dude, the fucking app captain if you were the fucking app captain and they just sent you their fucking thing, just and all you got to do is send back either a red X or a green check.
Agree to it or not? Yeah.
Let me say, because let me say this,
saying,
Rudy,
but-
without giving the name. There's a big health company out here that wants all their clients to get on their app, and this makes their medications more accessible, their doctors, the this, the that. And I still don't have that app on my phone, even though
Right.
that is who covers my medical out here. And that's the whole reason for it, where they're like, well, just go to your app. I don't have the app.
Well,
I don't have the app.
I'll tell
Because
you.
again,
I'll tell you. You've probably signed something else that gave away those rights, even if you don't have the app.
Yeah.
There's some other agreement that
Probably
you
just to have the
signed
phone.
just to see the doctor. Like you probably signed a document that said you agree to these sorts of terms and conditions.
And as slimy and as underhanded and as fucking yellow tooth grinned as I think that is, it's almost more. To me, it's actually still more ridiculous that we think that we have a leg to stand on when we argue back, because essentially what we must argue is how fucking stupid we are. We have to prove to the people listening that, hey, I'm so fucking dumb that for them to make me sign that and expect me to read it, that's unethical. Because they know how stupid I am.
Can I give you the flip side of it?
What is the flip side?
I represent a lot of companies, right?
Okay.
So like I get why they do it, because I defend lawsuits all the time that nobody should have ever brought. Like just completely frivolous cases that nobody should have ever filed. They're filed in bad faith. It's a holdup. They're trying to extort a quick settlement. They have those terms and conditions and things like that. Not to deal with like the honest consumer who's coming in to do this. It's to try to weed out some of the riffraff that are going to sue them for meaningless things.
Right.
So that's the flip side.
But there's no, but is it really a flip side though, Ryan? Because we're all scrolling through that not because we don't care about these little details, but because we simply don't want to read the things that are clearly laid out for us. And it's like, what type of argument is it to make when the judge says, well, why did you sign it? You can't really sit there and convince anybody by saying, "Hey, well, who the fuck reads that?"
No, I agree with you. That's
Just because the print is smaller,
that's a weak argument to say. I look, and the digital age has changed business forever.
so much.
Imagine 100 years ago, you go in to make some sort of, you're doing a livestock trade, and they hand you a contract. You're going to read it before you sign it.
Yeah.
We got into this mode of instant gratification. I want to order my food. I don't want to read this shit. Here, click. I agreed to it. Okay.
Right.
Like, now let me order my sausage McMuffin or whatever. That doesn't mean it's right or wrong. It just means we're in an age where things are different now. And like signing your name to a piece of paper used to be really, really important.
Yeah.
Now we have to sign our name so frequently that it's sort of lost its significance.
But how does that whole? I guess right now I'm kind of playing like fucking the devil's advocate, because I if I'm the judge in this situation, as much as it fucking frustrates me that little shit is snuck into fine print over in text that we
I agree with
naturally
you.
I know as much as it bothers me though, I can't disagree with the people who rule against us,
right?
Because it's like we should have read that.
Correct.
So what leg does anybody have to stand on when they say, hey, look, I'm just so fucking negligent, how can you expect me to read that? Like how can you win that case?
Yeah, I don't think they have strong arguments, frankly.
And people should consider that instead of getting mad at the small print.
Correct. Look, I think, again, official legal advice here. Read something before you sign it, period. And if you're unhappy on the back end and you find out you signed something and gave away some valuable right that you otherwise would have had, it's really on you. I mean,
fight to get out of it.
But this is the reason I bring it up, fellas.
I'm a big and lawyers shit aside, I'm a big fan of personal accountability.
Yeah,
just
for sure.
generally,
Yeah.
even if it's not a legal issue. I did this; it was wrong. I'm going to accept accountability for it. Like, and getting on a soapbox here. We've lost some of that.
So much of it.
I really
a lot of it.
Yeah, I think if people would hold themselves more personally accountable for the mistakes that they make, the world would be a lot different
Absolutely.
in a positive way.
But
Absolutely.
I wanted
Sorry
to
for
use
that.
this
No,
example.
you're right.
I wanted to use this example.
Donate to
fellas.
Ryan Pinkston's fucking foundation, the Hold Yourself Accountable Soapbox Committee.
And I'm not shitting on this app, all right? I'm not shitting on this app. I'm just bringing this as an example because I don't know if you guys have heard this. Someone ordered some food on I think it was DoorDash or one of these food, and I guess this dude had delivered there a couple times. He didn't get tipped. Well, then he poisoned the food.
Ooh. What?
And I think the whole family either got hospitalized or died from that shit, right?
God.
But this is why I'm bringing it up is because that person just was ordering food, didn't tip, whatever. They're horrible, but they shouldn't be hospitalized or because
You
of
don't
that.
die 'cause you
but
don't
when you're
tip,
sitting
that's
there and
fucking
you're
crazy.
signing the terms of agreement,
Yeah.
and that's
that-
the instant
that-
where
yeah.
you're like, fuck. Now I just signed away my rights, and all I wanted was a cheeseburger and French fries.
Well,
I was
that's
too cheap to give them a $3 tip. But
So two things. One, those people getting hospitalized is the exact type of personal accountability I'm talking about. Tip your drivers.
Oh, wait.
So
Wait a minute. First of all,
that was
fuck
a joke,
tips.
people. That was a joke.
First of I don't fuck with tips. I want to make that clear. I don't tip nobody unless it benefits me. I want that to be known right now.
All right. So, but in all seriousness, the second point is that type of conduct is probably going to be outside the scope of some sort of an agreement that you signed, right? Like companies, individuals, things like that. I can't sign away my right for you to against you intentionally harming me. Those types of contracts are typically unenforceable, right? Exceptions, like sports,
Right.
If we're playing basketball and you knock me down and I blow out a knee, I can't sue you for that
Right.
because it's within the spirit of the game, right? I assume the risk. But if I signed a document that said, "Yeah, kick me in the knee as hard as you want," and you blow out my knee, that might be enforceable. But if I just sign a contract that says I agree to deal with you in a business-like manner and then you kick my knee, that's outside the scope of the contract. That's typically not going to be enforceable. So this driver poisoning them, definitely not going to be covered. Well, I shouldn't say definitely.
Like Chick-fil-A is not getting
You
in
do
trouble
know
for
I'm going
this.
to use that part of
Yeah,
you
I
saying
know
that
what you're
as a
going to
clip-
edit.
as
Yeah.
a clip
So I'm
bait.
just going to say it 10 times now. No, that sort of conduct's probably outside the scope.
Yeah.
The individual driver who poisoned them certainly would
Stands alone.
Whether the company can be held liable for that conduct, right? So there's a phrase in the law called frolic and detour, and it comes up a lot. Like you have like a pizza delivery driver, for example. They're driving a pizza to a house. They drop off the pizza, and then they go to run an errand real quick before they go back to their place of employment, and they get in a car accident. Is the pizza company responsible for that? Maybe. They were out as a delivery driver, but did they go on a frolic and detour? Were they doing something that was outside the scope of their employment?
I mean, just the terminology alone makes it opens it up for so many possibilities.
Right.
Like
And-
anything could be a fucking frolic and detour.
Well,
Yeah,
and look,
that's true.
and so the cases we see that get litigated to trial that you
Yeah.
have juries decide and that courts write opinions about are like the extreme cases, right? Or no, sorry, the close cases, right? Because the extreme cases, delivery driver goes directly to the house, turns around, is on the exact same route back, and gets in a car accident. That one's easy, right? Okay, delivery driver goes and delivers a pizza, then he drives out to Coachella and does a bunch of acid and then gets in a car accident. That's clearly outside the scope of his employment. The gray area cases are the interesting. Well, I was just running I had to run to the
Stop by the bank.
Stop by the bank. Like, well, is that it wasn't outside his route. Like, those are the interesting cases.
Yeah, that gets super dicey, man. Because it's like I mean, frolic and detour is just like it sounds like a made up thing, but it does make sense when you think about where it actually
Some
applies.
judge 150 years ago
Yes.
used that terminology, and
For
it just
sure.
became embedded in the
It's
lexicon.
like, babe, I wasn't being unfaithful. I was fucking frolicking and
frolicking and
detouring. Just
detouring.
fucking don't worry about it. It was just
Right.
along the way, you know.
Well, no, frolic and detour means you're probably liable.
Oh, you probably are liable.
If you were on a frolic and detour, the company's not responsible for you. Yeah.
Okay, but then you don't want to use that.
Main man, Rick James, comedian Rick James, get up on.
In my opinion, podcast. My opinion, podcast. All nine niggas.